Good afternoon. So, we will be proceeding to another element of fiction, which is the plot or the structure of your story. Plot is usually the organizing force of any work of fiction. The plot is the one that stitches all the elements together and everything else in the story. Now, in order for the plot to be really interesting, there should be conflict that should take place. Now, when we say conflict, this is a technique wherein we pull our main character towards achieving his or her desire. We kind of use conflict to prevent the characters from reaching his or her desires. Now, the more fierce the conflict, the better your story will be. Conflict can take in so many forms, but we will be having six. Number one is the internal conflict. Now, internal conflict would mean the character is struggling about his or her identity. That is called man versus himself. That's an internal conflict. Man versus man is basically another character is preventing the protagonist in reaching his or her desire. That's man versus man. Man versus society, the character struggles with what's happening in his or her environment. It could be the traditions or the norms of the society where the character is in. That could also be part of man versus society. Now, man versus nature, the environment is the one preventing the character in his or her achievement of the goal or his desire. Man versus supernatural would mean that there are supernatural characters that hinder the protagonist in reaching his or her desire. Now, supernatural could be based on mythology. It could also be based on witchcraft or religious tenets. Or it could be pure fantasy. It could be pure imaginary. Lastly, we have man versus technology. The conflict here is that technology is the one um, serving as an obstacle for the protagonist to achieve his or her desire. For example, Black Mirror, right? It's a series wherein technology is perceived to be damaging. Technology is perceived to be bad and distorted, right? So that could be an example of man versus technology. Now the plot structure. Please remember this that even though you already know the Freytag's pyramid, right? Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and that's not just the plot structure that you should apply. Most of the stories, even if it's fiction or not, the structure would be cause and effect. What do you mean? But what do we mean by that? Um, the things that are happening are results of the actions of the characters. And the actions of the characters are a response to the things that happen in the story. So it's a cause and effect structure because the character did did this action in the beginning of the story. This will be the result in the end. Or it could be something that happens in the beginning of the story that made the character did this action. That could also be part of cause and effect structure. Okay? You have to remember that in fiction writing, cause and effect structure. The things that happen are a result of the actions of the character. and the actions of the character are responses to the things that happen. For example, the queen died and then the king died. Can you call that a plot? Of course not. But let me fix that. The queen died and then the king died of grief. Now, if we apply cause and effect structure, this second example is considered to be a plot because the queen died, the king suffered from depression or grief. That's why he died. So there is an element of cause and effect in the story in the sentence. So that can be considered a plot, or that can be considered a structure of your plot that could be based from the sentence. Now I have here a modified structure of the plot. We can apply the ones that we learned, such as exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and end. So the plot structure that I have here is the beginning, middle, and the end. In the beginning, of course, is the exposition. You give enough information, but not too much. You give enough information about the setting, about the characters. Actually, you can start writing the conflict in the exposition. And then in the middle, this is where various events can take place in the middle because there can be a little exposition also in the middle, and then you proceed with the rising action. This is where the characters start to complicate things, right? And then proceed to the climax, the highest peak of interest, and then proceed with the falling action. The characters are starting to resolve, or the crisis or the issue has been resolved. That could also be part of the middle. And then the end part would be, of course, the resolution, the actual resolution, and the end of the story. Now, for the last element that you should learn is the theme. Now, don't be confused with message and moral because that is different from theme. When we say theme, this is the element that holds all the other elements together. For example, visualize a glass of wine. You cannot drink the wine without the glass, right? So, glass is an important part of appreciating the wine. Okay? Sometimes we are so focused on the wine that we forget that the wine is in the glass. So just like theme is the glass that holds the story. We cannot, sometimes we overlook the theme because we appreciate so much the story, we forgot what it is all about. That is what we call theme. It's a unifying idea in the story. How do you identify the theme? You may ask yourself this question. What critical belief about life are you trying to convey in the writing of your short story? Okay, you ask yourself that question. What critical belief about life are you trying to express? Are you trying to convey in your short story? Okay, now this belief can be an idea, and this belief can also transcend from cultural barriers. So we are talking about big, big, big idea when we talk about theme.